Welcome to the Rethinking Humanity podcast, where we dive deeper into what makes us human and what causes us to thrive. I'm Lacey Delane.
Hi, I'm Sonia Lorea.
And we are so excited to have you guys. It's episode 14. We have done more than 14 episodes.
I think so.
Yeah, because we do our Rethinking Humanity interviews and, different other ones. But this is officially episode number 14. And we're coming up on a year of doing the podcast in April, which is crazy and exciting. And we have some exciting things on our 1 year anniversary, teasing that now, not telling you any details, but exciting things on that. Sonia, we are, it's January 15th. How are you? What's going on?
I'm okay. There's so much happening, right, in the world and things. So I know we kind of touched on this before. We're in a new year, but then we also are seeing tumultuous changes in our system, of government. And this is going to be interesting. And it's amazing that we're, here to talk about rethinking humanity, because I think right now we're living rethinking humanity.
That's so true.
It's going to be interesting. I, on a personal note, had a loss in an extended family member. And I'll tell you, I bring that up today because I was actually talking to our technical guy, Victor, before you came on, Lacey, how we really have to appreciate, the moment that we have right now. Just, to our listeners, like just the fact you can walk outside, breathe the fresh air, or I know we talk a lot about connecting with friends, social distancing, having a cup of coffee, just simple things in life. I think we have to show gratitude because, you don't know what's around the corner. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
That's awesome. That's a great reminder, Sonia. I actually was telling you guys before, I'm feeling frazzled today.
I know. We want to know.
Yeah, but I'm going to share it. But it actually helps me to just reset my mind and go, hey, Lacey, everything's okay. You're going to be fine. Everything's going to be fine. And you know what? There's so much to be thankful for, even in the middle of working through different things and trying to make things happen and, accomplish everything we all, I'm sure, will accomplish. So I will say thank you for that, because I needed to hear that. And I'm sorry for your loss. It's always a hard thing to lose somebody. And there's a really good book that I may have told you about it. I think I've said it on the podcast before, but it's called How to Survive the Loss of a Love.
Oh, yeah.
It's about loss in general. And it talks about how your body responds,
right?
How to have compassion on yourself, how to give yourself space and time before making big decisions. I mean, it's awesome book. It's like a little handbook. It's just got bullet points on each page on how to get through loss. And so for anyone out there who's listening, who's struggling with loss, I know there's a lot of people right now who are struggling with loss because of COVID. I suggest the book. It's fabulous. And Sonia, I'm so sorry. It's not an easy thing. It's not an easy thing.
Thank you. And you're right. I'm going to definitely look at the book. And I think the reality, like what you're saying, is everybody's going to have loss. We're all even experiencing loss through, what we're dealing with now. And it's part of life. So I'm going to definitely check the book out because, I love to read. So that will help. Yeah.
It's the best. Well, I'll share a little bit of why I'm feeling frazzled.
Frazzled, yes.
Hello, listeners. Have you ever felt frazzled? I bet you have. So you can relate to me. So I found out recently that in order to get into Guatemala, you don't have to quarantine anymore for 7 days. That just changed in December. I found that out recently. I have been wanting to go back down to Guatemala to visit since the end of the campaign, Andrew Yang's campaign that I worked on, his presidential campaign. And when I found this out, I was like, oh my gosh, this timing is good, not from the COVID perspective, but for my own personal perspective for different reasons. So all that to say, I feel like I have exhausted every single avenue to try to be able to renew my passport in time for the trip, which is before the end of the month. I went online to try to book an appointment. That was booked up. I tried going online on the time that they were supposed to renew, like open up new appointments for the next travel day. That didn't work. I've been on the phone. I emailed the U.S. Embassy in Guatemala. I emailed the Department of State.
Oh my gosh.
Friends. I also talked to, one of my friends told me that and this is cool for our listeners, guys, this is so cool. Check this out, because this is something that can help you in the future. So one of my friends told me, she said, Lacey, there is this thing called a constituent advocate that works in the senator's office, in your senator's office. And she said, you can ask them to help you with different matters that are, regarding the state or whatever. And I was like, what? I had no idea. So of course I reached out, and unfortunately our senators are not answering phones right now, I guess because of the runoff or what have you. And so I reached out to her senator in North Carolina, and she gave me a representative's information, who's down in Savannah, represents the Savannah area. Long story short, I was able to mail my application out today overnight, and it'll get there on Tuesday. And hopefully, fingers crossed, I'll be able to get it. Yeah. It's a maybe. But it's the brightest it's looked in days now, because I booked my travel before I booked my appointment, because online it says you have to have travel booked before you can. Yeah. Woo!
Just for a brief thing for our listeners, I don't know that everybody knew that you lived in Guatemala and your experience there. Can you share that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. So part of the reason I want to go visit is because I lived there. I know people there. I have friends, and some friends who feel like family down there. And so, I lived there for a year, taught in an English immersion school, down there, and grew my Spanish and fell in love with that place. I mean, there's so many gringos that go to Guatemala and don't ever leave. And I get it, because I
really? So it's that good. Yeah.
Yeah, it's that good. So,
well, that's awesome, Lacey. And I hope you get that passport. Either way, you will eventually get it.
True.
Yes. But wow, what a process.
Yeah, I've been running around like a chicken with my head cut off, and it's not something I like to do, but I'm very thankful for every step and being able to get to this point. And hopefully, you guys, please keep your fingers crossed for me. And you know what? You know what'll happen? You'll get to see a cool backdrop while we keep
Yay.
Yeah, but anyway, I think I love travel, as you guys all know, so that's what I'm hoping for. So that's been my frazzle. Do you know what's kind of helped me though to chill out a little bit in the last couple days? It's this thing that I found online, Sonia. I think I told you about it. It's this thing called the Quiet Punch. And
tell us.
Yeah, so this thing is like an in-home boxing thing. Mm-hmm. I used to do kickboxing, but I don't feel comfortable going to the gym. Some of you may be able to relate to me on this. So going to the gym right now is out of the question. So I was like, the thing that I really want to do is just to be able to punch and kick and box, and it's so good for you. It's healthy and it burns a lot of calories. And so anyways, I found this thing on Instagram, and it's so easy to set up. It's very lightweight. And it's an incredible workout. It's an easy way for you to get a fun workout in, even if you don't know that much about boxing. I don't know a whole lot about boxing. I just know I like to punch shit sometimes.
Wow.
So have you ever done that? Have you ever boxed before? Sonia?
No, but I think I saw you post something. So for everybody, I'm different than Lacey. I actually go to a gym. I do Orange Theory. I haven't been lately. I'm doing walking because I put it on hold for the holidays. And it's pretty intense workout, by the way. But anyway, back to your thing. I saw the punching bag, right? And it looks so cool because it was just go, 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 go. And I thought, wow, that would give you strength, burn energy, get you motivated. I mean, you tell me, because I haven't tried it.
Yeah, well, you might have to try it, girl, because I don't know what you think. But yeah, it's great. It burns calories. And what's cool is they have become a partner with us. And if you are interested in purchasing one of these, you can go on their website. It's quietpunch.com, and you can order one, and you can put in the code Rethinking Humanity, and you can get 10% off. So isn't that cool? This is a means of celebration, Sonia. This is our first sponsorship kind of cool deal. You know what I mean? Yay! So thank you to Quiet Punch for working with us. And again, the code is Rethinking Humanity, 10% off. Check it out if you are at home or if you just like boxing, or if you just don't want to go to the gym and you're willing to try something new. It's awesome. It's a lot of fun. So,
I have a question. If you've never boxed, can you do it? Is it
hell
easy to learn?
Okay. Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, I don't know all the proper form, and I put that in my little Instagram post. But that's okay, because there are videos and stuff on their little app that goes with it.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
He can teach you that way.
Oh, cool.
So,
awesome.
Yeah, that's cool. So yay for that. Wow. All right, we got through a lot. Sonia, are you ready to dive in?
Let's dive into Eric Fromm.
Yes, I'm excited. This is chapter 9. This is the last chapter of the book. The chapter is Features of the New Society. This is a fascinating chapter, isn't it, Sonia?
Yeah, it is. It's a lot.
It's amazing. There's a lot here. There's a lot in this chapter that Fromm is presenting as some possible ways that we shift to the being mode of existence as a society. And so we're probably going to break this up a little bit. And today we're going to talk a little bit about how difficult this is and the importance of understanding how difficult this change would be. We're also going to talk about the difficulties that the construction of the new society, he called it, would have to solve. And then we're also going to talk about a thing that he calls in here sane consumption, which is quite fascinating. He even talks about cool ways that we can advocate for sane consumption to get us to a place where we can live in that way, as opposed to insane consumption, which is buying shit all the time, which is kind of what we're doing now. Wouldn't you say, Sonia?
Yes, for sure. This chapter is interesting. I mean, as you and I spoke, you could definitely break it up into multiple episodes, and I know we're going to do more than one. I really like the fact that he talks about we need a humanistic science of man. I love the way he frames that. And then it's interesting because he starts this chapter by asking, why strive for the impossible? So already he sets us up that this is going to be challenging. There's a lot of things that have to happen, which is not to say to not do it, but because that's what we're talking about here, right?
Right. But I think the acknowledgement of how difficult it is important, because for a couple of reasons. At least one I would want to share is that, I think the first thing someone says or thinks maybe when you say, how can we change our society to be in a way that is more accommodating to us as human beings, the first thing they think is, that's way too hard. Like, it's not going to happen. You know what I mean?
Right. No, I can see that, because he points out right away in the beginning some of the challenges. And I thought, it's appropriate with the way that we're living today. He talks about giving up unlimited growth, giving up the free market economy to a certain degree, furthering scientific progress, though, while preventing progress from becoming a danger to the human race.
Right.
Which we kind of talked about here too. And all these things are happening right now, which is really interesting. Creating conditions where people feel joy in their work, having basic security. And I love this. Restore possibilities for individual initiative and living rather than business. So I think this kind of speaks to what we're doing with the Rethinking Humanity. We're talking about living and not the status quo. So he already throws out there what we're going to have, what we're dealing with, which is what we have today.
Yeah, for sure. And, I think what's important before we can even address all those things is everyone saying, yeah, this is kind of crazy, crazy difficult, right? But because it's crazy difficult doesn't mean it's impossible. It just means we have to accept how difficult it's going to be before we can move forward, because it's going to change the amount of effort. It's going to help us to know the amount of effort that we might need to put into it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I do. I mean, this is why I think he talks about also that when I said we need a humanistic science of man, he's talking about a humanist body of experts, which I really like, because we're not talking about just, hey, we decide we're going to make these changes and, we're not going to analyze what we're doing. Like, you're actually having people look at, the problems and breaking that down. And so therefore you do have the experts a lot. Well, we're going to get into it. It's also the individual as ourselves, like a consumer,
Yeah, I see. We'll get into that. I like the way he puts it before he gets into those specific things. He says, but those who have not given up hope can succeed only if they are hard-headed realists, shed all illusions, and fully appreciate the difficulties, as in like the difficulties of doing this. This sobriety marks the distinction between awake and dreaming utopians. I think that's an important point, because if we don't, if we can't understand that there is a utopia that we can have, and that's a controversial statement, but work towards anyway. If we can't understand that that's possible, but it's going to be very, very challenging, we're way less likely to do it, to even put any effort forth.
For sure. I also like the statement where he says the goal is not control over nature, but control over technique and over irrational social forces and institutions that threaten the survival of Western society, if not of the human race. So it's obviously we can't have control over nature, but control over technique is an interesting way to look at it.
Yeah. He talks also a little bit about decentralization, having a high degree of decentralization, giving up the goal of unlimited growth for selective growth. I think that's a very good point, without running the risk of economic disaster. I wonder what your thoughts are on that point, Sonia, the giving up the goal of unlimited growth for selective growth.
I think my thoughts are that's very hard, because we live in an economy that the idea is to keep growing and growing. That's one of the things he addresses, is like the organizations. Like, the organizations sort of have unchecked growth, or corporations, so to speak. So it's all about continuing that wealth, right? And that's something that to change that mindset. You're also going to have to change, which we're going to get into, changing the consumer.
Right.
And so how do you change the consumer mindset? Because the consumer is the one that's allowing the corporation to keep growing.
Right.
I.e. Amazon. I mean, we can use a lot of examples, right?
It's so easy to do Amazon. Anyway, it would have to create work conditions and a general spirit in which not material gain, but other psychic satisfactions. I told you I was frazzled today. Other psychic satisfactions are effective motivation. I love this. Some people don't like the word psychic, probably. They're turned off by it. But basically what he's saying is that there's something other than finances that motivate us to do what we're doing.
Right. And, this is why it's so perfect to discuss this now, right? Because I think you and I read, and we might have addressed this article on here, the article where I told you about it, where these individuals that were constantly being productive, all of a sudden they couldn't work, right? Because of COVID. And then they're saying, well, what am I doing? I'm not producing, and I'm not, doing what I was doing. So it's almost, you have to be forced, for some individuals, if you're not doing that self-awareness, you have to be forced into starting to think outside the box. Like, what does my life look like?
Right.
If I'm not in this production mode.
Right. And that ties to the last bullet point that he has here. It must, the society, he says, must restore possibilities for individual initiative in living. You mentioned it earlier, rather than in business. And I think that is interesting to me too, because it links to the conversation of what will we do when we have a basic income, or what would we do if we had a basic income and we didn't have to work at a job for our income? What would we do? And that scares some people.
Sure.
But actually for me, it's very exciting. It's like, hey, then I get to self-actualize. I get to, have time to really explore who I am and what the world is. And so I think those two things there go hand in hand.
Right. I mean, it's the opportunity to find meaning in your day-to-day life. And that can only happen, which I think he lists on those bullet points, is if you're provided for, if you have that stability that we
Right.
talked about, that, it's, you have to be in that position to even start to do any of the self-actualization that you're talking about. And I think it's interesting because it's how do you get people to want to do something different is a question that he kind of asks. How do we get there?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a way of life that we've been living for a long time, which I think is interesting because he even talks about it's really radical kind of change in the way we've sort of, our minds have been of consumption and the way we just do things, the way we get up every single day. It's turning it completely on its head.
Right. Which is scary for a lot of people. But he does make the point that basically when technology was in its babyest form, we would call it, that that was a dream, right? To make technical and technological advancements a reality. And that was something that they didn't know for sure whether they were going to be able to do. But they did, because they put their best minds, the brightest minds, on that topic, working towards that. And he argues that's what we need to do in order to shift our society, the values of society, into that place.
Right.
I think that I want to read this because he's referring to that in this paragraph. He says, technical utopias, flying, for example, have been achieved by the new science of nature. The human utopia of the messianic time, a united new humankind living in solidarity and peace, free from economic determination and from war and class struggle, can be achieved provided we spend the same energy, intelligence, and enthusiasm on the realization of the human utopia as we have spent on the realization of our technical utopias. So he's saying we did it with technology, but it's because we put the best minds towards it. Can we do it with our society? Yes, we can. It's going to be challenging, yes, but technology was challenging. Now let's put that energy towards our society and the way that we do things.
Which is obviously really radical. The next sentence after that is, one cannot construct submarines by reading Jules Verne. One cannot construct a human society by reading the prophets. That's really good.
Yeah.
Because there you're talking about action, that we actually have to take action. And again, like you're saying, the best minds are mobilized to devote themselves to this humanistic science of man. And I think, again, it's really radical in that instead of looking at, okay, how am I going to make my company grow? How am I going to grow? So I think this is, it's definitely a process. And I think Fromm realizes that. And that's why this isn't easy, why he talks about it in the beginning of sort of the challenge, the impossibility of it. But it's what, I think it's what we have to work towards from an existential perspective, or we won't be around anymore, like our species. That's my opinion.
I actually agree with that. And I was actually thinking of that point the other day in the context to some of the craziness that we're seeing going on in the world, current events lately, right? I mean, just the events that happened at the Capitol last week, or on the first early in January, the pandemic. And I was thinking, wow, like this is kind of sort of where we're headed if we don't make some changes. And, more is on the way if we can't make those changes.
Yeah, more is on the way because we as a culture, we're definitely at a point of crisis. And I think what we've seen is that, sort of ignoring the denial and ignoring the problem has not helped us, as Fromm would say, because we're faced. We're now at that moment that we have to make radical changes.
Right.
And it's interesting because some of these changes are being forced on us, right?
Right.
We didn't expect we're going to walk around and be wearing a mask all the time, or not able to. I mean, if you had told us today how this world would be, we would say, well, that's crazy. That's like dystopian or something. It's just, we wouldn't register it. But so some of these changes are being forced upon us, and others we have to have the will and the courage, and as you're saying, the wisdom with the experts to make the necessary changes.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think the courage, the wisdom, all that is available to us. We just need to have, we need to take the courage to do it, and also find people who are willing to take the courage and lead us in that direction. And Fromm goes on to say, if the economic and political spheres of society are to be subordinated to human development, which is what we're saying, we want humanity. We want humanity to be at the center instead of, capitalism or business or money. The model of the new society must be determined by the requirements of the unalienated, being-oriented individual. So that means that people don't live in poverty, but they're also not forced to be a consumer, by the way the society is structured. And he says, if we're ever going to get there, we must put an end to the present situation where a healthy economy is possible only at the price of unhealthy human beings.
I love that. I know. And I think that obviously you kind of teased that in the beginning, that we're talking right now. This goal is towards sane consumption.
Yes.
When you hear those words, Lacey, what do you think of sane consumption yourself?
First, when I hear that, I'm like, it seems a little foreign to me. Like, what does that mean? But I guess that makes sense because we don't really live like that right now. I think the other thing I think about is changing the pace of things, changing the pace of how we buy and how fast things go.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I like the term. I mean, somebody would say, well, is that each person could have a differing definition of what sane consumption is, right?
Right.
So what I like that Fromm talks about is, which I mentioned earlier, is people wanting to do that. But I also think they need to be offered another alternative, right? Because we have this one way that as I stated before, that we've been living. So I'm trying to be a little empathetic. I'm totally for sane consumption, by the way, and I'm more of a minimalist. But I can see that I've also followed in the pattern of everybody else, like the herd. And so there has to be another way or other ways of living to be offered. Otherwise, you're just on that same train going nowhere.
Yeah, and I've even noticed about myself. I don't know if you guys have, but I have noticed about myself. Sometimes when I feel down or depressed, I want to go buy something as if that's going to make me feel better. I mean, seriously, but I've done it. I know it. I'm a minimalist. Whatever, but it's so much a part of our culture.
It's part of our culture. It's interesting you say that because we kind of replace it. So say you don't go on a shopping spree to the store, but then you go buy something else like that you think is going to fill that need. It could be a smaller item. So you could say, well, I'm not going and redoing my wardrobe, but it's still the idea of consuming, right? And not being in that moment of being okay with how you're feeling or, whatever those emotions are, if you're sad, if you're angry.
Right. And he actually talks about that specific thing in here. He talks about how that is a distraction from ourselves. He says people would see that most consumption engendered passivity, that the need for speed and newness, which can only be satisfied by consumerism, reflects restlessness. It means the person is restless. It reflects the inner flight from oneself, that they would become aware that looking for the next thing to do or the newest gadget to use is only a means of protecting oneself from being close to oneself or another person.
Yeah, that's awesome. I read that. I have that super highlighted. I mean, first of all, think about this. We're with the internet now. So speed and newness, definitely. The restlessness, I think we can all relate to. And then we have so many, distractions, so many. Even if you say, well, I'm not going to do X, Y, and Z, there's plenty more to distract you.
Right.
And it's just like, whoa, we're really reaching like a saturation point where we need another way of life.
And the sad part about that, I think, is it's so human to feel. It's so human to connect. It's so human to know ourselves.
Right.
And we aren't doing that because we are consuming. We are, buried in our phones or whatever it is. And, we're not allowing ourselves to be human in that way. And that is going to be damaging to us individually. It is, and it's going to be more and more over time. I mean, think about it. The one thing that we all want, Sonia, is love. We just want love. I mean, I remember I was at the coffee shop, and I saw a cute dog, and I was like, "Oh, he's so sweet. He just wants to be loved." And the person was like, "Just like everybody else." I'm like, good point.
And that's why people love animals, because they give that unconditional love, right?
Exactly.
So yeah, and I think the interesting thing with this consumption and being distracted is we kind of are not even like aware. We're sort of, it goes back to sort of that Autumn thing. We're not aware, like the days pass or the seasons pass, and then it's almost like you're in a fog and you have to wake up from that to even know that life is going by, because we're so to the next thing's gonna, bring our attention here, bring our attention there. We're either looking for it or we're distracted. So it makes it really hard to live in that being mode, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, what he says, it's just very, very profound. But he, like I said before, it's also based on the assumption, well, he says that consumers want what is good for them, which, he objects to that because he gives examples. Obviously, this is an example in the past of cigarettes when those were marketed. So I don't think we as humans always know what is good for us. And
right.
That's where
yes.
there's got to be some change. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt you. And that then comes the question of, well, who decides?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not the state, right? Nobody wants it to be the state. And he agrees with that. And so what he says is that sane consumption can only take place if an ever-increasing number of people want, like you were saying before, to change their consumption patterns and their lifestyles. And this is possible only if people are offered a type of consumption that is more attractive. Yeah. It's got to be something that they want to do. It's got to be more attractive to them than the one they're used to. And so he says that's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen because somebody says, we're going to do sane consumption now. Right. It's going to be a slow educational process. And he says that the function of the state is to help establish norms for healthy consumption. I wonder what you think about this, Sonia, because this is a big point he makes in this chapter, that the state can do campaigns to help us understand and present sane consumption as attractive. What do you think about that?
I think we're going to delve further into that, but I think then we have to define who the state is. Is it, the representing the people? Is it the body of experts? Is it a combination of both? Because obviously you would have people push back. But I thought of an example. It's not exactly consumption, but I think it's a good example of people wanting something different. So with COVID, a lot of people were forced to work remotely from home. And what's sort of evolved from that is that people, say, oh, this is a little better because I can hang out with my kids, or I can have lunch or whatever, take a walk. Now, I'm not saying everybody loves working from home. And I think probably ideally, maybe it's half, sometime you're out and sometime you're in. But what I'm saying, because that's been normalized and people have had that experience, they're going to now ask for that.
Yes.
And that's the sort of things that have to happen here, where everyone's like, whoa, there's a different way that I can do this. There's a different way that I can consume. There's a different way that I can live. Yeah. And when that is attractive to the person for various reasons, then you're going to see society, then it's going to shift. It's going to be it's going to be possible, is where I'm going with that.
Right. And he talks about how the U.S. FDA does something similar as what he's suggesting, to determine which foods and drugs are harmful. And so he's saying, in his suggestion, and Sonia, you were alluding to this just a minute ago, is that there would be a panel a panel of psychologists, anthropologists, sociologists, philosophers, theologians, representatives of various social and consumer groups that help give insight into what does this norm for healthy consumption look like.
No, I think you would definitely need that. I also think, like, I mean, I don't know. I'm sure he was looking at how things were in that era. I also think right now there's a certain segment. I would be one of them. I'm not saying every decision I make is a good consumption, but I even try to look at who I'm purchasing from. So say they're going to be giving back, say I pick a vendor, a book person that is going to give back to the community, or like I bought these candles for gifts, but they also support indigenous people creation. So the consumption sometimes maybe has to be tied to something beyond ourselves, so that we know we might be helping a little.
That's a cool idea. Yeah.
And so I think there's going to be creative, but that's just one way to think about it. I'm sure there's multiple ways to think about it, because we are still going to have to consume. There are certain needs that we're going to have.
Right.
And so how do we do that responsibly?
Right. Very true, and very, very interesting. He also talks about how important it is that we have research, prioritize research, because, he says examining what is life furthering and what's life damaging requires that. It requires a lot of research and really knowing who we are as individuals, what our, human nature is, what has been conditioned in us by our society, what hasn't, what is a inherent a natural human instinct, those types of things. I think that there's a lot of assumptions about what human nature is, and we don't have a lot of studies about what human nature is, or at least that are popular and referenced,
or that are maybe well known. When you talk about the experts or the people that we were talking about earlier that would make these decisions, what I think is very important with this, or of course right now, is the misinformation we have. There's so much information flowing that I feel Fromm has really hit on something, because when you have a collective effort of individuals, experts, maybe academics, maybe technology people, you're going to have more of a buy-in in your society than you have just one group that's sending the message to you.
Yeah, that's so true. I didn't think about that, but that's true. And he talks about, consumer groups and citizens.
Of course, citizens. And that's where I think, I'm like so on board with that, 100% citizens. Because now you have individual people that, can get this information and hear the research and make their own decisions. Also have input, because they are living day-to-day life, so they can weigh in on what these lofty ideas and goals that the state, as we call it, has.
Right. We told you this chapter was fascinating. Not even a quarter of the way in. He also says the decisions of this, he calls this like the humanist body of experts. This panel. They would not, he says that the decisions that they came to would not be implemented by force, but they would serve as guidelines. So, it would be something that we wouldn't have to feel like, oh, these people are like in control of everything. It would be something that we could feel like, hey, this is what these folks who have some knowledge in this area, and this area, and this area, and this area are saying.
Yes. What I like about Fromm, and I can just speak from my own personal life, is, to me, he really distills it down to like locally, like your life. What I like, because typically, listen, my personal experience, when you look at like experts or say government or state, it's like away from you, right? It's this other body or these people that really, they're not in your day-to-day life. And so we tend to get, I guess we're sort of dismissive, or there's apathy. And so I think Fromm is really making a great point, is the more involved, like on a local level, if you know what's going on or you're part of the decision making, then you're more excited about doing whatever it is you're going to do.
Exactly. It's like when you decorate an apartment or a home. If you are a part of that process of decorating it, then it feels more like home to you.
Right.
But if you walk into a home that's already been decorated by somebody else, or you chose, they chose,
right.
it doesn't feel as,
and you're not part of the decision-making process.
Exactly. So it doesn't feel as empowering. This is really cool. This next idea that he has, that the government can greatly facilitate this educational process by subsidizing the production of desirable or healthy commodities and services until these specific ones can be profitably produced. I think that's so cool.
Yeah, that's a great one. That's, 100% on board with that. Yeah.
Yeah. And he says also a large educational campaign in favor of sane consumption could accompany that, and that would be good. And that it would be expected to be a concerted effort to stimulate the appetite for sane consumption. And then hopefully that would be a pattern that would change, or illustrate the benefits of sane consumption.
Right. This is something. So I'm just going to play the devil's advocate when you're just talking about it. I'm pretty sure, I don't know if it would be libertarians or independents, or it could be any kind of political leaning, is going to be like, you're taking away my freedom, my ability to do what I want to do. So there, it has to be presented in a way that there isn't that idea that the state is imposing, like you're saying, like the idea of the suggestions. Because what would happen, I see, is that, just the other side is going to push against anyone deciding what they can do, when they can do it, kind of thing.
Definitely. I agree with that. And I think an argument back that Fromm would make on that point would be that that's already happening, by, propaganda, advertising. I mean, hello, the same, what was it? The social dilemma. I mean, social media is controlling so much of our thoughts and our minds, and they're making money off of it. So I think that's a counter.
It's already come and gone. It's like happening. People not being aware, but you're right. It's that ship sailed. Like that's already happening.
Exactly. So I think, the hard part about this is getting people to be open to whether this can happen. And I think, some of these ideas really help us open our minds to see, like, this really could happen. Maybe this really could happen,
And it could be like as other things that are going on in the States, where they'll take a city or an area and they have, it's an experiment kind of. You could do this maybe in certain cities or certain areas, and then see how that evolves and how you can use that city as an example.
I love this podcast, and I love you, Sonia. That's such a good point. I particularly like this episode because it's, I feel like it's a little more hopeful than some of the other things that Fromm wrote and some of the other episodes, because we're talking about potential solutions.
Right. No, yeah, for sure. I definitely think there are people out there that would embrace this wholeheartely and are very open to this. And it's like you're saying, getting society on board. And I definitely see, it just goes back to the beginning of the more humanistic approach, getting the best. I love that about the best minds. We have talent and we have top minds here.
Yes.
And we need to be focused on these issues. The very ones that you and I are talking about.
Right. Exactly. Well, there's actually still more on sane consumption, so we'll probably talk about it in the next episode. And there's so much more to this chapter. It's fascinating. It really is. So thank you guys for being here and listening to it and being here with us. Reminder, if you're interested in the Quiet Punch, check it out. 10% off with the code of Rethinking Humanity. Supports the program, supports us, the podcast. So check it out if you're looking for a cool, fun, new way to work out.
I like the name, the Quiet Punch. That's
cool. And it is quiet.
I wanted to ask you that too. Yeah,
you'd be shocked. Typically you think, if you're boxing, you're gonna the whole neighborhood hears. It's not like that. So that's cool. Awesome. And also Sonia, Instagram, right? We got Instagram going. we're much more consistent with those posts now. So find us at Instagram. What's your handle, Sonia?
It's let's see, at Larea Sonia. Yeah.
So Sonia's is at Larea Sonia. Our Rethinking Humanity one is at Rethinking Humanity, and we're also on Twitter. So find us on there. We'd love for you to tweet to us or write to us on Instagram. Tell us what you're thinking about our episodes. We have some really exciting.
Oh, I know. I was going to say, Lacey, you've got to tease it. We have a couple of really cool things coming up. So
yeah, we have a live interview on the 23rd at 3:30 with Dr. Andrew Phillip. Well, he's Andrew Phillip, PhD. He's a psychologist, and we're going to talk about integrated care. He's done a lot of work with how to really do primary care in a more holistic way. And so that's going to be a really cool.
It's really good. Yeah.
Yeah. We're really excited about that. So we'll have more fun stuff coming at you very, very soon.
I know. Glad to talk to you, Lacey. This has been great.
You too, Sonia. I appreciate you, and hang in there. Again, sorry for your loss, and
thank you.
We'll be in touch. All right, everybody. Stay safe out there. We appreciate you. Until next time.
Bye.